Mic'd Up Podcast, hosted by Dr. Mike Miller and Coby Duran of Central Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Texas, is a series of conversations about issues that matter. For people who have real questions and doubts, it covers topics of faith, theology, and philosophy in ways that are easy to understand. Ultimately, Mic'd Up is a podcast with a couple of guys having conversations about conversations you are having. Mic'd Up is produced by Al Lambert Jr. at Mic'd Up Studios in Jacksonville, Texas.
Getting psyched out. Let's go! Hit the Tom Brady. Michael.
Maundy Thursday.
Da, 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 da. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Coby.
You just got back from Germany.
Yeah, I know.
I need to tell you something so beautiful. Okay? I will recall back to a time when you and I were looking for sponsors, which is pretty much every episode.
Yeah.
I think back on like the Family Matters season that we were doing.
Yeah.
We, talked about our love for Oxbow Bakery pies.
Yeah.
And one of our listeners heard about our love for Oxbow Bakery pies, was driving down the road in Palestine, Texas, when she was listening to our episode about Oxbow Bakery, and was like, you know what? Like, here's my pastor and family pastor. They're talking about Oxbow Bakery. I'm within miles of it. I'm going to stop in. She stopped in, bought herself a pie, then bought me and you a pie.
So show me the pie.
Well, hold on. The story's not done yet.
I know.
You
know
were
where the
in
story's
Germany.
going.
And so Casey Egan, our very good friend and church member, bought us the pie. So shout out to Casey.
I was in Germany, Casey.
And
I think you knew that.
she took it. She took it up here to the church. And Mike, let me tell you something. There's never been something more painful for me in my entire life than having to look at that pie and acknowledge that I couldn't share it with you.
Is that why when you sent me a video of you and the pie, you were smiling from ear to ear? Is that why?
I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes tears mask themselves as smiles and things
Y'all
like
send
that.
me an email. I'll send you the video.
Let me tell you something. That pie was the best chocolate pie ever put in my mouth.
I'm sorry, what? I
Ever.
stopped listening a couple of seconds ago.
Yeah, I know you did. So I'm going to repeat it real quick for you, just because I knew that you stopped listening. Best chocolate pie ever put in my mouth.
Huh? What?
Oxbow Bakery. Casey Egan. Chocolate pie.
Casey,
you in Germany.
I appreciate it, but I'm just wondering, did you intentionally wait till I was in Germany to bring that pie so
Mike,
that Coby would eat it?
I enjoyed that pie so much. So much pie. It's amazing how many pieces you can get out of one pie when you don't have to share it with somebody.
My soul is downcast.
Here's what I loved about it. Your response to my video was like you talking about a hamburger in Hamburg, Germany.
I had a hamburger in the city that the hamburger came from.
Here's the deal though, okay? It's a hamburger.
Let's get going.
Hello, folks,
Hi.
and welcome to the Mic'd Up Podcast, where we have the conversations.
About the conversations that you are having.
Man, we still got it.
We got it.
We're like 5 years in, and we got it. We don't have any sponsors, but man, we got it. Whatever that is.
I think we need to start going back to Oxbow and get them to, if they just bring us a pie every time we do a podcast.
Dude, we have sold 2 pies for them already.
We would start doing like 4 podcasts a week.
Hey, Al.
Yep.
Can you reach out to Oxbow for us, like as our producer? Can you reach out and say, listen, here's what we know. We know this as a fact.
On it.
He's doing it right now. We know that we have sold 2 pies for them.
All right. What's our topic today?
Holy Week.
Holy Week.
All right. Let's start off with just a couple toss-me-ups. Just little things that you can just knock out of the park here. Because, I know that you're off your game. You've been in Germany.
I am off. I'm wondering if I remember how to preach.
Oh, man. We'll find out on Sunday. It's Thursday. We're about to find out.
It's coming fast.
All right. So by the time that our listeners get this podcast, it'll probably be like Holy Week will be on their doorstep at least.
Okay, today is April 3rd when we're recording this.
April 4th.
And
3:15 p.m.
But Holy Week begins officially with Palm Sunday,
April
which
13th.
is the 13th.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So I get, and I used to be this way, so I know this group of people. I have changed. But there's this group of people that are out there, they're like, hey, you shouldn't need a season like Lent or Advent or Holy Week to get right with God, to give God the reverence and participate in a holy manner before Him, worship in a holy manner before Him. So what is the significance of Holy Week, and what would you say to those people?
Actually, I'm going to say I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible doesn't tell us to do these things because
Right.
obviously these are not commanded. These are obviously not things we need. But does that mean something can't be helpful?
Right. Yeah.
And like, I know you practice Lent in different ways. I don't.
Yeah.
And honestly, my attitude about that is, well, if I'm going to like abstain from something, I just need to go ahead and abstain. I don't need to wait for Lent. You know, I just need to go ahead and do it. But I see the other side that says, hey, not like, well, in 6 months I'm going to abstain from this sinful thing. Well, no, you wouldn't agree with that.
Right, yeah.
But as a time period where you're going to spend these weeks and really trying to draw closer to God,
Yeah.
and in doing that, I mean, it's like fasting. Fasting, I'm actually talking about this Sunday in my sermon because it mentions fasting. Do you know that fasting is only commanded one time in the Old Testament, and that's in connection with the Day of Atonement? Now, there are times when the prophets or the leaders called for a fast, but there's only really one time where, like in the law, that God called.
So out
for
of
a
all
fast.
the Jewish festivals and feast days, there's only one day where you fast?
Where it says, yeah, and actually what it says is you afflict yourself, but that term is connected to fasting in some other scriptures.
Man, okay, that is really interesting because I've just always read those passages and maybe just assumed, I don't know why I connected that.
In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks about when you pray, when you give, when you fast.
Yeah.
So it is expected that it's something we'll do, but
Right.
there are not parameters on it. And like the passage I'm preaching this Sunday, the Pharisees are questioning, well, somebody's questioning Jesus, saying, hey, the Pharisees fast and the disciples of John fast. Why are you? Because Jesus is at this big feast because Levi just decides to follow him, and Levi invites all his friends, and they criticize him for that, and then they're like, well, you're eating and drinking instead of fasting.
Yeah.
And so this probably happened on a Monday or Thursday because the Jews at that time, the Jewish leaders taught that you have to fast every Monday and Thursday.
Yeah.
And so that is not the law. That is
Right.
not, you're not commanded to fast on Mondays and Thursdays.
Right, yeah.
And there's no prescription for it. And so I would say when it comes to deepening your spiritual walk, since there's not a particular prescription for it, what's the harm in it?
Right, yeah.
If you want to say, hey, I'm going to take this time leading up to the crucifixion and the resurrection time, well, I'd say that's a pretty good time. Even though it's not something I do,
Yeah.
why would anybody knock it? Do you need it? Well, no, but if it's helpful, why not do it?
Yeah. Yeah, I've learned, because I have practiced Lent now for about 5 years. And one of the things I've learned about Lent, and I've just got to say, I'll go ahead and make a confession. One of the things that I gave up for Lent this year, I'm not doing a very good job at. There's been a couple times where I'm just like, dadgummit, what am I doing?
If it was chocolate pie, you failed.
Listen, did I mention that was the best chocolate pie I've ever eaten?
I'm sorry, I checked out again.
No big deal, no big deal. But, one of the things that I've seen for me personally is I get to that time leading right up to Lent to where, like, I really try to spend some time in reflection, like, hey, is there anything that's just throwing me off my rhythm with Christ? Right. And then I try to eliminate that. And part of what I've seen in my own practice with Lent has been, hey, now I have moderation. Like I fasted from it. I got rid of it out of my life for this 40-day period. And now I'm picking it back up because it's not an evil
So you're
thing.
not talking about sin. You're just talking about something that's become a distraction or a problem for you.
I can't remember if you and I had this conversation on the podcast, so forgive me if I did, but There was one time where we had this young man, our student minister, and we were talking about Lent, and he came to me and he was like, "Hey, I was like, hey, what are you giving up for Lent this year?" And he was kind of walking me through it, and he's like, "Well, I think I'm." It's not funny, but it is kind of funny, I guess. He's like, "Man, I'm gonna give up pornography," and I'm like, it is like there's a part of me where I'm like, man. Kudos to you. Like, that's a good thing. But, let's go ahead and give that thing up regardless.
And don't start it back up after Easter.
Start that back up. And because, that's not what Lent is about. Lent is not about fasting from sin.
Right.
It's about fasting from those things that are kind of neutral, that direct us away from God, or maybe we have allowed them to become idols or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I know people that will say, I'm going to fast from social media during this time because it's gotten the best of them.
Yes.
And they'll report that, hey, after fasting from it for 6 weeks, I was able to go back to it without going first into it.
Right. And there's some people that are like, you know what? Like, I don't even need to pick it back up. Like, I'm okay. Like, I don't need this in my life.
And then, of course, there's the objection. Well, that's just a Catholic thing. Okay, well, it's not just a Catholic thing. I mean, Protestants have been doing it.
Where does that come from?
Well, I don't know, but particularly, like, I pastored in New Orleans for 8 years, and it's a very Catholic city. And let's be honest, Baptist evangelicals, at least in modern times, have not done Lent, right? And Holy Week and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff. And so the association in New Orleans, when you leave the Catholic Church and you become an evangelical, since we are of the free church tradition, meaning we don't have a set liturgy that we follow every Sunday, anything that smacks of that liturgy, they reject.
Interesting.
And so,
what do you feel about that?
About
like they're like them saying like, hey, if it smells of the liturgy, I'm going to reject it. Like, what is your comment on that?
Well, my comment has been, hold on a second. Is this something that is like Catholic doctrine and is connected to like, because the Roman Catholic Church does not have the gospel. I mean, their means of salvation, it's a works-based salvation. Yeah. And so I tell them, let's look at some of their doctrine. Like, if you read what Catholics believe about the Trinity, they are 100% accurate on the Trinity. They've got the Trinity. On the deity of Christ, I mean, they've got the deity of Christ. They've got it figured out. We disagree with them on other stuff, but I wouldn't go, well, Trinity's Catholic. I'm going to be done with that. Well, just because it's something they believe or something that they do doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, they can still do good stuff.
What's the old saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah, for example, we're doing a thing. We do these big question Sundays, and I'm teaching on Freemasonry this Sunday. Yeah. And, spoiler alert, Freemasonry is not Christian, and I think it is really bad for Christians to be involved in it. But
we need to have an episode on that.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
And maybe we can do a series on some different beliefs and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And yours, you can pick up your Pentecostal thing that you're going to be talking about. But I don't mind at all saying that the Freemasons do a lot of good charitable work. Why can't I commend them for what they're doing?
Right. Yeah.
And so they are doing it. And I reject Freemasonry. I personally reject Roman Catholicism. But just because there is a practice that they participate in doesn't mean it's a bad practice.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good word.
In fact, one of the things we did when every now and then when we're doing communion, our normal practice is to pass the communion elements out to the people while they're sitting. But sometimes we have people come forward, and I've been doing that. Not like every time, but I do that some. I've been doing that for a long time. Well, I moved to New Orleans, and a few communions in, I said, hey, we're going to have people come forward. We had got people get up and walk out.
Oh, wow.
I am not a Catholic.
Interesting.
I don't have to go to the priest to get the elements.
And interesting.
Like, hold on.
Because that's not what you're conveying there.
Not even a little bit. But I didn't even know that mindset would be there. But I mean, people got mad and they just got out of their seat and left.
Okay, speaking of another thing we need to have a podcast on, like we need to have a podcast like just for ministers and pastors where you talk about preparing the minister's heart for Lord's Supper. That's a conversation for another time. But anyways, that made me
because you led the Lord's Supper.
I led the Lord's Supper while you were gone.
It's different, isn't it?
It's very different. It's very different. And like I literally at the end of it, I was like, man, I kind of. Because this is kind of talking about Holy Week, because we usually practice Lord's Supper during Holy Week. But I mean, there was a moment when I kind of got home, was able to process. I was like, I much prefer to be in the pew at this point in time.
Yeah.
But again, that's a conversation for another time. So let's talk about Holy Week in particular, because what we have as a church here at Central Baptist is we have a Holy Week guide, and it actually kind of starts on
this
April.
is new, by the way.
This is new, yeah.
And let me just clarify. We've, like, for the past few years, we've done a Maundy Thursday service,
Right.
and we've done a couple of other little things here and there. But this is the first time we're actually planning activities for all week.
For the whole week, that's right. And so it actually starts on April the 12th for us with like just a very like evangelistic, community-centered Easter egg hunt. And we've been doing that for years. You know, and
By the way, how are we getting these out to people?
They're going to pick them up on Sunday.
They're picking them up on Sunday. Awesome.
Yeah, if the listeners can't see this, but our secretary Heather put this together.
She's our graphics secretary.
Golly,
actually, yeah.
she did so good.
She put together a beautiful. You wrote the content.
Yes,
and
yeah.
she made it look good.
Yeah. Our family
Very
ministry
impressive.
staff kind of went through the content, and then she just, anyways. So, talk to me about your experience as a pastor. Because, again, this is not something that we practice a whole lot. We have done the Maundy Thursday thing. So let's just start there. Why is Maundy Thursday important to you? And what would you say to the Christian who's like, hey, like, is this something I need to like look for if there's an opportunity in my community?
Well, I'm going to say it's something relatively fresh for me. I mean,
Okay.
I've done a Maundy Thursday service. Before I came to Central 8 years ago, I'd done a couple.
Okay.
And we started doing them, about 5 years ago, 4 or 5
yeah.
years ago. And because I wasn't raised in this, and because we're not in a church tradition, the evangelical church doesn't do a lot of this kind of stuff, which to me is frankly unfortunate because I think we're missing an opportunity. And the opportunity, and why I say it's beneficial, is because, we know that like on Easter Sunday, we're focusing on the resurrection.
Right.
And we also know that we should be, like throughout the year, focusing on the crucifixion and the resurrection.
That's right.
We should.
Yeah.
But it's just like at Christmas time. You really draw in and focus on the birth of Christ.
That's right.
Like I'll preach a sermon series every year that really focuses on the birth of Christ. And I think we evangelicals have missed an opportunity with Holy Week to spend more than an hour on a Sunday drawing our hearts toward. I mean, let's face it, the center of the Christian faith is the crucifixion and the resurrection. I mean, that is without the crucifixion, you don't have atonement for sins. Without the resurrection, you don't have.
Yeah, Jesus is just another guy.
Is just another guy. And so, why wouldn't we want to take an extended period of time and focus on those? And so, Maundy Thursday is an opportunity for us to think about this Last Supper and the night that Jesus washed his disciples' feet, and the night that he goes out, that his betrayer goes out and sells him and makes the transaction, and the night that he goes to the garden and prays. Why wouldn't we seize the opportunity, and especially for those of us as pastors, to help other people draw closer into that.
Yeah.
To spend more time, again, than just a song or two or a sermon on a Sunday, but to really set aside some time. And I have found it really beneficial for me. And, we've developed, and again, thanks to you, we've developed, we started off, my idea with the first time we did a Maundy Thursday service here was we put it together and we just had people around tables, and we do a dinner.
Yeah.
Didn't we do a meal?
I think one of the years we did a meal.
Yeah, we did a meal. What did we do last year?
So last year we had like kind of the worship service, and there was different elements.
But there was also food.
Oh, we did. We had an example of the. I'm going to say it wrong. The Seder meal.
Seder meal.
Yeah.
But we didn't do a full meal at church. I thought we did like a potluck.
Maybe we did.
We did. And are we not doing that?
No,
this
we're
year?
not doing that this year.
Okay.
No.
Because I like that.
It was fun. The only reason we're not doing that this year is because we have so much stuff going through the week. We're just like, oh man, this would be a lot.
But anyway, what we do is we sit around tables instead of in pews.
Yeah.
And the juice and the bread, we have somebody make unleavened bread, and we got a pitcher or a carafe of the juice, and We use juice and not wine, and we're not going to have that debate right now. I've got no issue with using wine.
Let's have the debate. No, I'm just kidding.
Frankly, I would prefer to have wine because I think it's more authentic doing it that way. But I understand the arguments for and against, and we're choosing not to be a stumbling block to anybody.
That's right.
So, so this is what we're doing, and then we have somebody at the table serve. Just doesn't matter who. But somebody at the table is going to help pass out.
Yeah, I think we tried to get the men of the family to serve their family as best as we could.
Yes, if they're there, but we also have people that aren't there with their families and stuff like that. Yeah. And so somebody picks that up. And
by the way, that was the first when we did that. That was the first time I had ever participated in the Lord's Supper around a table. It hit different.
It does hit different. You're looking people in the eye for one thing. It's more intimate because you're sitting there with your family and your friends.
Yeah.
And again, it's a less sterile environment, for lack of a better word. And
I agree.
And we got the best feedback the first time we did that.
Yeah.
And not that many people showed up the first time.
It was a relatively small group, yeah.
But word got out.
Yeah, last year we had a big group.
We did, and last year was the first time you incorporated the other elements.
Yeah, the washing the feet. We had a station of the cross.
Yeah, we didn't do a washing of the feet service, but we had a place where you could go. Like a dad could go wash his family's feet.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to wash my daughter's feet. And, I think everybody utilizes it a little bit differently. I'll tell you, like, for me, going and washing my daughter's feet, like, I did. Like, there was just, like, as I was there and I was serving them through that symbolic act, because, their feet aren't that dirty.
Right.
We have socks and Nikes.
Yeah. You don't have boys.
And I don't have boys. But, like, I did, like, with my middle child, it's just like, baby, I'm sorry for anything where I have not been, the dad to you in this last year or whatever. Because, like, it's not like I'm a perfect dad, and I have plenty of...
There's only one perfect dad.
There's only one perfect dad. And so, like, like, we all have things to apologize for. And so it's just this moment for me to be like, and I told her, like, I want to serve you better and I want to do this. And I will say, for me to have that time with my girls, especially my older two, they were old enough to really understand what I was speaking to them, and it was meaningful to them. It was a very special moment. And then, I got to do that with my wife as well, and just it was. For me, this is a personal thing, and I know that a lot of people participated in it, so I'm not saying you have to utilize it for this, but it was just like this kind of like time of like recommitment, like, hey, for any area that I failed you, you just need to know, like, I'm processing that and I'm working through that, and I want to do better here.
Right.
And so it's a special thing, and then like just anytime that like we activate our body in repentance, like going and like writing down, maybe it's a sin or maybe
or
some
when you
burden.
Actually get on your knees,
or you
get on your face.
There's something about that.
There is,
and I don't think that you have to do that necessarily to repent, but. There is something powerful about that. So, we had some opportunities to do that as well, too.
Yeah, and we had some other activities there. We had the cross where you could go and write something and nail it to the cross and that kind of thing.
We got something cool. I'm not going to spoil it for all of our people, but we got something cool
neat.
this year that I'm excited about.
And so, so this week we actually put, there's this guide that you guys put together for us, and it's got daily devotionals.
Yes.
And we're doing the Maundy Thursday, and then we're doing a Good Friday service.
Yeah, Good Friday.
And by the way, we're doing something.
We're going to do something there, too, that I'm pretty excited about.
It's going to be so cool.
Yeah, man.
And I'm really looking forward to that. So these are just going to be out at like where we put stuff for people to pick up at church. So everybody can grab one.
We're going to have them in each one of our locations, like in the Big Question Sundays classes, so that way people. Okay, so I want to ask a question though, and this might be like a Coby and Mike in your office question that maybe we have to. I don't know if we have to edit out or not because I don't know how. This might be like real raw for some of our people. I don't know. You mentioned the deal about like the preparation, how we miss out on something by not participating in Maundy Thursday, by not like really prepping our heart. So we were in my office, I think it was yesterday, and John said something to me about Easter service.
Yeah.
That like stopped me in my tracks. I think you were in there, weren't you?
I was.
Okay, so here's what he said.
Yeah, I remember it now.
This was wild to me. He's like, we were talking about the flow of the service because we have like 3 baptisms coming that Sunday. We got
and we're adding an extra worship service.
We're adding an extra work. So we got some fun stuff that's coming. And we were like, well, hey, what is the time of invitation going to look like? And I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, usually Easter Sunday is not a time of a big response.
Right.
And I just that floored me for a second because I processed, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever seen somebody get saved or come and make a profession of faith on an Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question. And by the way, I've actually had now this conversation with some of my other buddies here in ministry. All of them said the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there is potential? Because we do. I mean, like, for me, Easter Sunday is special.
It is.
There's going to be a lot of people in the house.
Yep, more than any other Sunday.
More than any other Sunday of the year, and that's nationwide. Do you think that some of the lack of response is a result of maybe the church not preparing in the lead up to it as best as we could / should? I mean, I don't know. Again, that might be like a raw conversation, so I don't know.
It could be, but also, let's be honest. One of the reasons the crowd is bigger is you get people that don't normally go to church.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say all those people that don't normally go to church are not Christians,
Right.
But you're going to have more non-Christians that day. And so the mentality, I think, is this should be the day where most people get saved because we're going to have the most non-Christians. But it's also the day where you've got the most people that don't know what's going on and what to do. And like if you say, hey, come forward, they may be the actually most reluctant people to come forward.
Right.
Whereas, used to be like Billy Graham was a big deal. Whoever you were, you knew if you were going to a Billy Graham crusade, there was going to be this big invitation time at the end.
Yeah.
I don't care who you were. You knew it was coming. You'd seen it on TV. You've heard people talk about it. But we don't live in that kind of church culture anymore, and where people are used to knowing what's going on in church. We're getting more people that didn't grow up in church, and they're not expecting to do something. And like when you say, hey, this is your opportunity to come forward, the unchurched people are sitting there going, what?
Right.
What's this all about? I'm not going to walk down there, but I would like to talk to the pastor tomorrow.
Right. So like there might be things like are coming in the subsequent weeks, months, things like that.
And let's be honest, most of the baptisms we see, most of the people we see who come to faith don't do it on a Sunday morning.
That's very true.
Now, Sunday morning is a component to it, and we're sharing the gospel. And I have conversations with people after Sundays. I have people talk to me during the week, and whatnot. And a lot of them, they're hearing the gospel like week after week after week on a Sunday.
Yeah.
But we don't see that many people come forward.
We see it on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock
salvation.
when somebody comes into the office or something like that.
Yeah, or in somebody's backyard or at a restaurant or whatever.
So, okay. I had this question in my mind. I was gonna ask it, and I was like, "Man, this is about to be provocative potentially." But then I answered it for myself too at the same time. But I want you to answer it.
Okay.
Though. We don't see that many people respond on Sunday morning. Why is it that the gospel itself, because every Sunday we point to the gospel, but not every sermon is necessarily like the presentation of the gospel. I don't know if that's
So the point, the truth is, the point of the sermon should be the point of the passage, and every passage of Scripture is not about how to be saved.
How to be saved. Okay. So if we're not seeing these people get saved on Sunday morning, Easter Sunday, this conversation, I love this conversation right now. It is so different than how I thought it was going to be. Why should we present the gospel on Easter Sunday? Why should that be the main focus of Easter Sunday?
Okay, I'm going to answer that in two ways. I present the gospel every Sunday.
Yes, yeah.
Because the Bible says the gospel is the power of God for the salvation of all who believe.
Yeah.
Secondly, just because somebody doesn't walk forward and give their life to Christ does not mean that the gospel is not penetrating their hearts. And I'm going to have more unbelievers in the room sitting in my preaching than any other Sunday, and I will not squander the opportunity to preach the gospel to them.
Well, and the answer that I had in my own mind almost immediately after asking the question in my mind was like, I need to hear the gospel. Like I need to be saturated with the loving act of the crucifixion.
Here's the thing
and resurrection.
too. We don't just preach the gospel for unbelievers.
That's right.
We preach the gospel because I need it every day.
Yeah.
You need it every day.
Every day.
But by the same token, I am not going to squander an opportunity of presenting the good news that is the power to save people.
Right.
When God brings them into the house.
Yeah. No, that's a good word. Like I said, man, you just brought up some things, and as you're bringing them up, I got all these questions that are coming. Okay, so let's do this right here. One of the things about our Holy Week guide, and by the way, if you're a listener out there, we don't mind sending you our Holy Week guide at all. We would love to do that.
We don't sell our stuff.
We don't sell. We'll send it to you for free. There's a ton of other good resources out there for you. But this is something like kind of for our church that we designed, and we did I did my best. This is on a different note too. Golly, this is like the most everywhere conversation, but I love it. Do you have a hard time kind of tracking Jesus's path through his last week of his life as you read the Gospels? Like I've tried to kind of pin some things down.
Yeah, and the reason is, I mean, this is a good thing. When you go by a history, let's say somebody tells you, man, I just read this new book on American history or on the history of the Civil War. You really need to go read it. History of World War II. You're going to go get the book. Like, let's say you like reading this stuff, and it's going to start with the very first thing, and it's just going to take this chronological walk through that. Ancient historians did not write that way. They weren't as concerned with the linear path. Now, like you read the Gospels, and Matthew and Luke start with the birth of Jesus, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all end with the crucifixion, resurrection narrative and all that stuff. But the stuff in between, they were more likely to group stuff thematically than they were to keep a rigid timeline.
Yeah. People try to attack us like, oh, y'all don't even know when this stuff. And it's like, well, but you're right. That's not the purpose of the ancient
What we're doing is we're taking a 21st century standard and applying it to first century.
Right.
We're taking a 21st century American standard and applying it to a first century ancient Near Eastern people. And it's not fair. They just did things differently then. Yeah. And
the ancient. We're talking about the ancient Near East. The Near East today does things differently than we do.
Absolutely.
And so now you rewind that 2,000 years ago, and it's like, there is a very different communication thing going on.
Yeah, in fact, we recently had, this is Far East, but we had some missionaries that are missionaries to Japan speaking at our church recently. Right. They were speaking to one of our Sunday school classes, and the husband is actually from East Texas, but the wife is from Korea.
Yeah.
And they lived in a particular country in Asia, and then they moved to Japan.
Yeah.
And Japan was different than this other country they lived in. And he said the hardest thing he's having to get accustomed to, and she understands it a little bit being from Asia, even though Korea is not the same way, is he said, the country we lived in, you want to say something, you just walk up to somebody and you say it. But in Japan, he said, you don't do that. You talk in circles around it, and they're supposed to figure out the point you're making. And so people come and they talk to you, and you have to figure out what they're actually trying to say to you. And so that's not wrong. It's not bad. It's just a different way of thinking. And I'm just using that as an example that in these ancient histories, they were writing histories not concerned with the exact order stuff went in. They were concerned with getting across what happened and why it happened.
Why it happened. Like, you're talking about like the communication styles. I think of the story of, isn't it Abraham who kind of had the, you see in the Bible, this transaction between him and this guy about purchasing a burial ground for Sarah. And, I've always read that through like the American lens of like, oh man, look how nice this guy is. But apparently he was like being a pretty...
Oh, no. I would never take money from you. Abraham would have never gone, great. Yeah. Really? I'll take it.
Yeah.
No.
Isn't there like some like weird negotiation happening that like our American eyes just can't see?
There is. Yeah. And Abraham's like, well, no cost is too high. That's not literally, but it's kind of that thing. And so, you got to come to this meeting, and because you don't want to go at it cutthroat.
You don't want to just be too abrasive.
Right.
Yeah, because like our American style is just like, no, you just say that, you just go at it direct.
Yeah.
And
what do you want for that field? I'll take $15,000.
Yeah.
I'll give you 14.5. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. I've seen a lot of what do they call it? The pawn stars. Like I've seen a lot of negotiation. Right. But anyways, that's a good example there. So, anyways, our Holy Week guide it's our best attempt at trying to put some chronology on Jesus' last week, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah, and there's some stuff that seems to kind of go back and forth. And you've got another thing you have is not just the way history was written, but you've got Matthew writing, Mark writing, Luke writing, John writing. And they're all telling different episodes, and you can't. So, like, you might have one of the writers mention one thing that the others don't, and another mentions one thing that the others, and you're like, well, where does this fit?
Right.
And I think they would go, why does it matter?
Man, y'all are like studying that way too hard.
I need to know, right? And so,
like one of the things that we know, or we're very confident on, that happened on the last week of Jesus was him clearing out the temple.
Yeah.
And so like that's one of the emphases on one of the days is like him clearing out the temple and how that relates to our life. And, our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And so we're trying to clean that out. And we sometimes have to be violent about that when it comes to the things that are in our life. And so, there's not this like perfect chronology in there, but we do kind of have, as the week goes on, it's kind of building up to this Maundy Thursday, building up to this.
By the way, can I say something totally irrelevant?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is just totally irrelevant. But there's these guys, and you know who I'm talking about, that their favorite Jesus is the flipping tables Jesus.
Oh, my
You start talking about mercy and compassion. They're like, Jesus flipped tables. He flipped the tables. And they love to talk about how he got a whip and started beating people with it. He got a whip, but here's the argument I'm going to make. It wasn't for the people. You used a whip to drive the animals.
Animals out. Okay,
But these guys are convinced Jesus got a whip and just started whipping dudes in the temple.
Can I have another confession? I used to be one of those guys.
Were you really?
Dude, I did, man, because I've always struggled with that element. That's why my thought, like my answer to that question, like, well, okay, like if people aren't really like notorious for getting saved on Easter Sunday, like why we present the gospel? And the first thing that came to my mind was like, well, yeah, because you need it. Like it's just, there's always that thing in me that like is going to lean towards the more, I'll tell you, one of my favorite passages growing up was Revelation 19, when Jesus comes back, and he's on the horse. He's got the sword. I'm just like, that's my Jesus. But, like, I've just had to learn, like, man.
Now, don't get me wrong. I like that Jesus, too.
Yeah, you do see that part of his character. But, I mean, Jesus didn't go around slapping people. He told people to turn the other cheek.
There's a certain segment in evangelicalism today that is obsessed with that aspect.
So we're not taking that approach when we're talking about the cleaning out the temple. No. Oh, man. So anyways, our hope for our families and our people here at Central, and if you want the Holy Week Guide, by all means, reach out to us, is that it is a time of preparation for you, so that way you can get the most out of Easter Sunday.
Yeah, and let's just answer this question. What does that mean, getting the most out of Easter Sunday?
That's a good question.
Here's what I'd say to you is the more that I immerse myself in the gospel and who Jesus is and what he did, the better I walk with him, the holier I am, the less interested in sin I am.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about getting the most, we're not talking about how to have a great Easter Sunday. We're talking about how to take this opportunity to draw closer to Jesus and get more clear in your mind the price that he paid for you and the victory that he secured for you.
That's right.
And to fall more in love with him. Because if Easter is just like, man, the music and the sermon was really cool, it was Easter.
Yeah.
Honestly, we failed you.
Yeah. And we have some cool elements coming this Easter that I am super excited about.
We do.
But if that's all that you walk away with, then hey, we failed you.
Everything we're doing that people might call really cool or neat or exciting, honestly, our intention is to help draw you more closely to Jesus, to help you see. We want to exalt him and make him more clear, bigger, more vivid in your eyes, in your mind, in your heart. And so when we talk about helping you have the best Easter experience, that's what we mean.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like if you want to get the most out of the corporate setting, you've got to have a fruitful private, setting with you and the Lord, or maybe you and the family and the Lord.
Yeah. What you do Monday through Saturday will determine a lot about your worship experience on Sunday.
What it looks like when you come together with the body at large. So we're hoping for a good one. And I will say, I'm going to, because of that conversation with John, and then, like I said, I can't remember now what you said in this conversation, but it kind of sparked that. I'm going to start praying that we actually see a harvest on Easter.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun. And, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But I'm going to start kind of working that direction in my prayer life, because I don't think I've ever done that. I'm trying to remember if I've ever just like really spent time just like, man, God, like save a bunch of people.
I do every Easter.
Well,
I mean, I pray for that on Sundays, but I specifically pray for that because, God, we're going to have more unbelievers here than ever. And I'm praying that, because, part of my testimony is, I mean, I hated church. I hated Christians.
Yeah.
Fell in love with Terry. She invited me to come hear her sing on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
I went. That was the first time in my life I'd heard about the resurrection.
Yeah. That's cool.
I didn't get saved that day.
But it started a journey, though.
That was the day the Holy Spirit first started tangibly working. Of course, I couldn't articulate that, but looking back, I went to talk to my dad. I'm like, Dad, why did I sit there in tears in this church service?
Not even a Christian.
Not even a Christian. I'm like, I felt something. And we don't base anything on we don't base everything on feelings, but I felt something.
Yeah.
And it was not tied to Terry. It was tied to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it. And I didn't have anybody really to help walk me through that.
Right.
But, I kept just showing back up at church and kept coming back. And I was in a church that didn't preach the gospel.
Yeah. I heard you say that.
But to his credit, when I went and saw my pastor, I'm just like, man, I'm in a bad state here, and I don't know why. He says, well, it's because you need Jesus. And he shared the gospel with me. And I came to the Lord in his office. So I go on Easter, which would have been, this time of year. I got saved in September.
Yeah.
So, but it was Easter.
Right.
And then, I don't know if you know this, but part of our story is I was not a good Christian. I was not walking with the Lord. My marriage was on the rocks. And this is for any music guys who are listening out there, or for you pastors out there who think the sermon does everything. I had met this Baptist preacher. I really liked him. We were getting ready to start looking for a church. I said, let's go hear him preach on Easter. And there was a song. And this is a longer story than we have time for now, but there was a song. And there was one line in this song that the Lord used to break me. I mean, I sat there a broken man. You've probably heard those. You've probably had those times where you may get teary-eyed in a worship service. Yeah. No. I was causing a scene. I mean, I was crying like this, where I couldn't get my breath. I was weeping openly and loudly. And
you got to tell me.
Terry's sitting there going,
what is going on with this guy?
What is going on? People were staring. And it was an Easter song. I mean, our marriage was in trouble.
Yeah.
And neither of us were walking with the Lord, really. Yeah. Terry was trying more than I was, but I mean, we weren't walking with the Lord. And this wasn't the cause of our marriage problems, but when a marriage is bad, you have those things that are sort of these focal points. Yeah. Is that Terry wanted to get pregnant.
Okay.
And honestly, she'll tell you that part of her thing is, if we just have a kid, it would help things,
yeah.
She'll tell you now, kids don't help marriage.
That's not how that works,
that's not. I want to say that differently. It's not that kids don't hurt marriage, but that's not a solution, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I'll just tell you that I was not walking with the Lord. I treated her poorly. I didn't ever lay a hand on her or anything like that. I was cruel to her, and I'd actually said to her, fine, have your kid, but don't expect me to have anything to do with it.
Oh, man, yeah.
That's the kind of guy I was.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound really silly telling the story.
No, I love it.
No, but the line, because it's just such a simple thing. There's a song, there's a group called... oh gosh, it's slipping my mind right now, but it'll come to me in a minute. I listen to this song every Easter. There are two songs I listen to every Easter Sunday morning in my office.
Okay.
One is Was It a Morning Like This? Because that's the song I went to hear Terry sing on Easter.
Okay, got it.
That time. And the other is this song. It's called Arise, My Love.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you what God did to me on that Sunday. There's a line in the song, Jesus is laying dead in the tomb. And it's a song. It's not scripture. This line is not in scripture.
Yeah.
God says to him, arise, my love. The grave no longer has a hold on you. And what hit me, and again, it's just a song,
Yeah.
is in the song, God didn't say, arise, my son, arise, my child.
Yeah.
He called him my love.
Yeah.
And right there, that line hit me because, as you know, I've had this great relationship with my dad,
Yeah.
who was the biggest, strongest, toughest man I've ever known and the most tenderhearted.
Yeah.
And my dad used to talk to me that way.
Yeah.
He would say, oh, my precious boy. You know, I'm a teenager, like I'm 17 years old, and we'd be sitting there eating dinner, and he would just go, you are just beautiful. Do you know that? And I'm like, I can't, yeah. But I'm sitting there, and here's what happened. I'm thinking, God called him my love. That's the way my dad talks to me.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I want to have a relationship with my own child like that?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I? And I'm thinking, this is the most perfect love that as a human I've known, is the love my dad had for me.
Yeah.
Completely unconditional.
Yeah.
And then it hit me. The child is not our problem. The child is my heart. And I just realized how hard my heart had become
Yeah.
toward God and toward Terry. And it's like God took this crusty heart and just snapped it in his hand.
Right there.
And
Yeah.
I fell apart.
Yeah.
And now I got to tell you the rest of the story.
All right, let's go.
So we get in the car. And I mean, our marriage was just about over at this point. And we're driving home, and Terry's not saying a word. I mean, she's just like, she
Because
doesn't
you
know
just
what's
been
going
blowing snot bubbles in the...
on. Dude, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm causing a scene.
Yeah.
But I mean, we go on, we sit through the sermon. I have no idea anything about the sermon. And I didn't get home. I pulled into a parking lot. I could take you to the parking lot in Odessa, Texas today. I pulled in. And I said to her, you know, I just confessed. I said, I have been awful.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm not walking with Jesus. And that's the problem. And because of that, I've become hard, and I've hurt you. And you're the most important person in my life. And I said, I've been so awful. It may be too late, and it's probably too late. But if there's any possible way you can find it in your heart to forgive me, I'd like to start over.
Yeah.
And like that, she goes, of course I forgive you.
That's awesome.
Let's start over.
Yeah.
And on that day, I was restored to my relationship with God, and I was restored to my wife, and my marriage was healed in an instant. And our marriage is not perfect. It's never been perfect. But since that day, I can honestly say we have had a good marriage.
Man, that's awesome.
And it's gotten sweeter and sweeter and sweeter.
And that was an Easter Sunday, you said?
It was an Easter Sunday, and it was through one line and one song.
Yeah.
So that line probably has never hit anyone else the way it hit me that day. So I approach every Easter asking God to do what he did to me
Yeah.
in other people.
Yeah.
Whether it's through a glance that someone gives them, or a lyric, or something I say, or whatever. I am praying for that
Yeah.
on Easter. And I sit there in my office, I read my Bible, I have my quiet time, and I play Was It a Morning Like This? And I play Arise, My Love. And by the way, the words in the song, Was It a Morning Like This? Isn't it interesting? I'm a preacher, but it was music that got me the most those two times. Says, and bear in mind, I'd never heard of the resurrection of Jesus. I was 21 years old, had never heard of the resurrection.
This was on your first Easter Sunday.
It was my first Easter. I thought Easter was bunnies and eggs.
Yeah.
And there's a line in there that says, did the grass sing? Did the earth rejoice to feel you again?
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that line, thinking, He walked out of the tomb and the earth was happy just to feel his feet. Again, did the Bible say that? No. But you can't tell me the Lord didn't use the lines in those songs to get me. And to everyone listening, I would ask you during Holy Week, pray that the Lord would do whatever needs to be done in your heart.
Yeah.
But also pray that the Lord would use whatever happens at your church on Sunday to begin that journey for somebody like he did with me, or to bring them. And it's the phrase I use that happened to me with that song, Arise My Love, is like with the prodigal son, where it says he came to himself. When he's living with the pigs, I came to myself on that Sunday.
Yeah. Golly, praise God for that.
So yes, I approach Easter with great expectation and anticipation every year. Sorry, I wasn't going to go there, but
no, I'd love to have.
By the way, I've only told that story in very intimate settings. This is the first time that's like going out.
A public?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate the vulnerability.
Well, obviously, it's hard for me to get throrough it.
Well, I know, but I think that can really help kind of set some people free too, with that testimony. And I also think it does testify to the power that the Holy Spirit has to use anything.
Yeah.
We all know that music has power for good and bad.
And somebody's out there, so you say only that can happen on Easter? No. If you hear me saying that, you got a chip on your shoulder.
You missed it. Yeah,
you're looking for something.
You missed the testimony there for sure. So, and the deal is too, it's like, hey, maybe you don't spend the time in preparation in Holy Week. God can still work.
Yeah.
Our goal is just like,
I wasn't prepared either of those times.
Right, yeah, you weren't prepared either of those times. Our goal here is just like, hey, let's do some of the work before. Because our life that is the journey of the Christian life. Yeah. It's this journey of like taking step by step by step, work by work by work. Sometimes we have seasons of rest. Sometimes we have seasons of great joy. Sometimes seasons are just hard. Yeah. It's like, hey, let's do what we need to do so that way that corporate setting is as meaningful as it can be. Not to say that it can't be meaningful regardless.
And let me just say too, that pastor was a guy that had meant so much to me. I mean, I had met him and really liked him, and that's why I went to church. Is just because I liked him.
Yeah.
His name is Bailey Stone. Our marriage was healed that day. God gave us a daughter. We named her Bailey.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. All right. Well, I think that's a good wrap on this particular episode. So, folks,
I hope we're done. I'm exhausted now.
we got our shout. Our shout out is twofold. Number one, Oxbow Bakery. We sold you 2 pies.
We did.
Come in strong for us. Number two, Casey Egan. Thank you for the gift. That was really special. We appreciate that. We appreciate it, Casey.
I do, and I know you were thinking of me too, but Coby just really ruined it for you. So,
hey, did I mention that might be the best chocolate pie I've ever eaten?
I'm sorry, what?
All right, folks, we'll see you.
Bye.